Hi everyone, welcome for a third time to Experiment 7's The Laboratory, our weekly live stream. You know, this is our second episode, so we're seasoned veterans at this. We don't ever put the wrong setting on the microphone.
No mistakes.
My name is Corey Seifert. I'm the director of production here at Experiment 7. With me I've got Demetri Detzeridis.
How did you do that? Demetri and Detzeridis. You screwed it up twice in a row. They had all the chances in the world.
No, the first time I got it right, remember?
That was last week.
Yeah, that's true. So we have a great show today. A bunch of cool stuff lined up. We are being awesomely hosted by the fine folks at Wizards of the Coast. Thanks to those guys, specifically on their D&D stream. We're really excited. We have a couple really interesting things to go over with Dungeon Chess. We're going to talk a little bit about Dungeons and Dragons. We have a friend from WotC joining us. So that's great. So let's bring in our fantastic guests for the day from the coast of wizards himself, Greg Tito. Greg, how's it going, man?
Good. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me on. This is going to be fun. We got Nathan Stewart kind of lurking in the background.
Hey,
yeah.
what's up?
Yes.
Hey, Nathan, how's it going, brother?
That is professional working.
That was
That
good.
is professional.
Sort of wandered
Exactly.
onto the set. That was excellent. And as always, we've got Geoffrey Zatkin in our San Diego office.
Even though it says New York City.
Yep, that
Even
was a
though we
reference
just
instead of a
changed that.
clone. Yeah. Mhm.
Yep. Mhm.
So by episode 3, we'll have all the kinks worked out.
Yeah.
So the game we're here to talk about today, obviously, is Dungeon Chess. It's a chess game with a little bit of D&D sprinkled on it. Why don't we kick
Or a
things off?
D&D game with a whole lot of chess.
There you go.
What, sitting underneath it? I don't know. Anyway.
So why don't we kick it off with Demetri, Jeff. Why don't you guys give us a quick overview of what's Dungeon Chess and what's it all about?
Awesome. Hey, D, you want to kick in first or shall I?
Why don't you start? I started too many times last time.
You started too many times last time. By the way, hey, Greg, at least you're on the same coast.
Yeah, go left coast, best coast.
Yeah. Well, he's at the top because you got the Seattle, I got the San Diego. So, we got,
Right.
actually, we got Demetri and Coray over in New York. So we need a Florida and we'll have a full square going on.
I like that. That's good stuff.
Okay, next episode. We got a plan.
We'll get Hydro 74. I think he's in Miami, so that might work.
Wait, did you just open a Florida office, Jeff? Is that what just? Do I get to vote on that?
Moving on.
But you hadn't heard yet?
All right, Dungeon Chess boys, give us the elevator pitch.
Okay. So Dungeon Chess, Demetri and I and just a whole bunch of us over at E7, we've been playing board games for friggin' ever. And we've been playing D&D for friggin' ever. And we have a VR company that's focused on making basically really cool rooms and good experiences that you can come play with your friends, from anywhere in the world. Demetri's in New York, I'm here, Greg's traveling over to Tokyo. We hop in, we play games together on tables. And one of the very first games we were, basically as we were testing our technologies, hey, let's go make chess. And as we were making that, we were like, man, we remember Battle Chess and Archon and Harry Potter chess and, the Star Wars animated Hall, all of these kind of cool pop culture-y things. And we're like, it'd be really cool to do one of those kind of things again. And so as we were doing this, we'd been, Corey had been chatting with John over at WotC and knew that they were kind of starting to look around for some extra stuff to be doing. And we're like, wouldn't it be cool if we did like a throwback to kind of Battle Chess and Archon and some of the others, but with a modern twist. And if we went over to the WotC guys and said, hey, could we make this official D&D? And I could tell the story about how we crashed their GDC pitch process and everything, but I'll save that for another time. But we pitched them and we're like, yeah, how about this animated fighting Dungeons and Dragons, monsters on a chessboard? And they were like, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that Nathan, who just bombed in and strongmanned the background, which was awesome. One of the things that he said actually in an interview, in an article a few months ago, they were talking about, well, D&D, there's a D&D clicker game. There's a D&D VR chess game. Like, are we seeing D&D kind of stretch its wings as a pop culture brand?
Is this the D&D final form?
Yeah, well.
Right.
So
I like
No,
to
this
stretch his wings.
yeah.
Latte mugs for everybody with D&D. I think that's the ultimate.
So Greg, I mean, I don't know. What did you? Can you unravel that a little bit? Like, is D&D becoming more of a pop culture brand as well?
I think so. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons is got amazing penetration into the amount of people just know that brand. Whether it's from Stranger Things or from when they played 40 years ago to they're all in a group now. So I think the penetration of the brand going into different areas and different forms of gaming is right and good. And we're seeing more and more folks who want to play something that's may not be the genre of traditional tabletop role-playing games, but they still want to experience what happens with Dungeons and Dragons, those characters, that idea that you're telling a story with your friends. Even if it's a single player experience, it feels like you're still participating in what makes Dungeons and Dragons cool. So yeah, we're seeing that across the board, and I think Dungeon Chess is a great example of that, where it's a chess game. The mechanics are all the very same, but we all have those fond memories of battle chess. I remember I used to, make sure I could see every single animation by making sure,
and lose badly.
Yes, many times, but having a pawn be able to capture the queen to get the checkmate was always a fun goal to get to. So having that happen with VR and with Dungeons and Dragons Monsters is just perfect. I don't know, I love it.
Yeah, one of the things that I kind of always felt about D&D that it's finally starting to happen is as someone who grew up just soaking in this universe and reading the monster manual in the back of the car everywhere I went for years, that. You just never want to come out of it, and at the time you kind of had to, because unless you had a group together or you had the books with you, you weren't really playing D&D. And then when computer games started to show up, the Goldbox games and the SSI games and stuff in that era, you finally got to the tendrils finally got out a little bit, and you got to be in the D&D world while you were doing something else. And I mean, it's an odd thing about fandom, but I think it's something that's just super enduring. I mean, I remember when I read the Harry Potter books, the only thing that I could find that was a Harry Potter branded thing was a box of Harry Potter Legos. And I bought a box of Legos. I don't have anything to do with a box of Legos. I don't have any children. I don't even really know how to put Legos together. But I just wanted to soak in Harry Potter for another couple of minutes. And so that it's that's the power of something like Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm really happy that we got to start off our D&D experience by giving somebody yet another vector to access the stuff they love.
Yeah, so that's a great segue. So if we go back to sort of the beginning of Dungeon Chess.
Actually, wait. I got to interrupt you, Coray, for one thing. Greg, just so you know, my wife and I just finished up Stranger Things 2 nights ago on Halloween.
Nice.
No spoil.
And while we were doing that, we took
a
quick break at the end of episode 8, the Mind Flayer. And I went out and I pulled my first edition monster manual off the shelf and opened it up to show her, the Mind Flayer, the same one they just used in the show. And she was like, okay, that's
powerful. That's powerful.
And I was completely yeah, still got it.
I know. I wanted them to go into the Elder Brain and all the stuff that we did for Volo's Guide to Monsters and all that, but
Nice.
It's close. It was pretty awesome. Yeah, but no spoilers.
Nice. Okay, so here's my question to you guys. This is sort of to Jeff and Demetri, but Greg, this is also to you in a broader sense. For Dungeon Chess, we could have taken any brand and thrown it on and made a chess game, right, Greg? You could have worked anywhere. Why Dungeons and Dragons?
Oh, Greg, why don't you start that? How did you wind up there? And then we can talk about why our game is there.
How did I end up playing Dungeons and Dragons or working for Dungeons and Dragons?
Working at Wizards.
Oh, that's a crazy long story. And it's one of those, because we do get that a lot. You're like, oh, how did you get, to work in the game industry? Not even just at Dungeons and Dragons, but how did you get into it? And it was happenstance more than anything else. I was a theater nerd. I went to college for theater. Met my wife. She was an actress. I was a stage manager, and I know, but I did. I got to, and it was amazing. And she actually called me from Bobby Moynihan's dorm room from 4 floors up. She was like, "Hey, come on, hang out with us." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll do that." The guy who used to be on SNL and is now in a ABC sitcom. Went on to
Did you
do
go to the
crazy,
same
crazy.
college?
UConn? Did you go to UConn?
No. Sorry, I couldn't remember whether he went. I went to NYU.
Oh, okay, yeah, and Tish. Yeah, I had a niece who went there. But yeah, so I was doing theater. I was in New York City. I was producing small theater as much as I could, while of course having a day job. My day job for a while was theater. I was doing stage management, but through it all, I was always playing games. And I eventually married my girlfriend and then now wife. And I realized that I came up from a Catholic background, and so I was like you, Geoffrey, in that I was fascinated with the Monster Manual and all those books. And there was a point in the 80s where my mom was like, you know what, you shouldn't be playing that or looking at that or even having those books. So they went away. And I was living in New York. I was married. I was an adult by all measures, right? And I was like, nothing's stopping me from playing Dungeons and Dragons anymore.
I'm a big kid now.
I'm a big kid, right?
You're allowed.
I found a group. We played through the Age of Worms campaign, and I just lucked into having a group that was not only great role players, but really productive and creative on their own. So they started writing for at the time it was 4th edition was just about to come out. So they were working on those products, and I was like, oh, I might think about doing that. And I started writing some of that stuff. While at the same time following on the web Penny Arcade, the web comic from here in Seattle mentioned that they were in a small publication called The Escapist, which was a PDF that was sent out to game developers, and people used to print it out and keep it. It was kind of like a magazine quality with images and layout. And I was like, oh, that seems like a cool thing. I'll just pitch something to them about World of Warcraft, or I think it was actually Alpha Centauri, and they accepted the pitch randomly, and it was one of the first times I got paid for writing, and then that relationship continued, and I continued pitching more and more articles. Eventually they were looking for a full-time editor, so I moved down to North Carolina to work for them full-time. And I always had tabletop kind of in mind, even though it was mostly a video game based thing. So I tried to pitch them, hey, we should write about more. We should write about more Dungeons and Dragons, more Dungeons and Dragons. And then when I worked my way up through The Escapist, and eventually got laid off, like happens.
Yeah, that is kind of the next step after boss.
It's true.
Laid off.
Yeah, so editor in chief and then laid off. There's more to that story. I don't want to go into it now, but then eventually it was the perfect timing because Dungeons and Dragons was looking for someone to lead the communication charge, and I connected through. It was actually a guy who works at Telltale, Joe Stouffer.
Oh, cool.
It hooked me up with Nathan, and the rest is history. I've been here for about 2.5 years, just talking about how awesome Dungeons and Dragons is, which is what I was trying to do with all my articles at The Escapist going forward. So
yeah, which in the games industry is about 42 years. So
Yeah.
Congratulations on your 42-year anniversary. I believe that was yesterday.
nice. That's the fun thing is like, even though I've been here a long time, there are people who are at WotC and on Dungeons and Dragons who've been here for 20 years,
Yeah.
25 years, which is crazy in the gaming industry, as you guys know. It's just people don't stay at the same company, but the people do here.
And the company doesn't stay around.
It's true.
I mean,
There's that.
But that kind of goes to what we were talking about before with that super deep love of the property, where I used to work at DC Comics, and we had a similar kind of a vibe there. Everybody was, you were either there for 10 minutes, or you were there for 35 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. It speaks to the power of the brand. People here who are working on it are super passionate and just want to continue to make it grow and evolve with the players and everything that's happening. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and we love it here. And then I get to work with fine folks like you on a I don't want to say daily basis, but at least a weekly basis.
Yes.
And we've got more and more stuff that we're working on for the future too. I know you and I, Demetri, are talking about the future plans of things happening in New York City. So
yeah,
I hope.
In fact, I want to. We should get on the phone after this because I have an update for you, and it's good.
Ooh, nice. Okay, cool. Me too. Me
We
too.
like good updates.
All right, producer Coray is getting nervous, so let's move on.
What, you don't want to talk about secrets on a live mic? It's extreme.
Oh, God,
Speaking of
let's
which,
hang up
hey,
button.
producer Coray, why does my thingy say New York instead of San Diego?
We talked about it.
It's very technical.
A problem
It's
exists between keyboard and chair. over here.
Mostly, yeah, it's no, not enough coffee. So, Demetri, why don't you give us, what's your story? Like, what was the one thing with D&D that made you just fall in love with it? Give us like your great D&D
Way
story.
back in the day. Oh man, I mean, there's something about Dungeons and Dragons in like 1979 that was about being a big kid. That was like the thing that your friend's older brother did, and in my case, it was literally the thing that my friend's older brother was doing, and it was like you could borrow Jason's books for a little while, and then and run this like totally like random, like we just roll a bunch of dice and say we're playing Dungeons and Dragons D&D campaign. But the great thing about D&D is that it actually managed through the setting and the sort of robustness of the game to support both total goofing around and an actual serious approach to the game. So the older you get, you don't have to like go away, right? It's not like playing kickball. Like they pretty much make you stop after you're like 10.
Well, unless you're a hipster in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And then you play to your forever.
Yeah.
That's when I started playing. When I was a hipster in Brooklyn, that's right. So it makes sense. That tracks.
Nice. So Jeff, what do you think? Give us what's your like origin story for D&D?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think because I had the red book, the basic edition set from when it first came out. I actually still have the dice, the blue plastic dice that came with it. I was looking at my dice collection the other day. Oh man, I should dig up that. Actually, Greg, here's one for you. So about a year ago, as we were like chatting with you guys about some stuff, somebody made a dice comment, and I'd collected all my dice recently, and I looked at them, and I realized I'd had some of these dice for so I'm in my mid 40s. I'd had some of them for almost 35 to 40 years.
That's amazing.
I was like, I don't think I've ever cleaned my dice, and I know some of these have been to like conventions and rolled across sticky floors. So I took all my dice and I put them in this big bowl and like soapy water and washed them all off. And my wife came in again, looked like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Actually, you don't want to know on this one." But I have this picture I posted on Instagram. It's just this huge bowl of dice, like a little bit of soapy water. And afterwards, I was like, I have no idea if anybody else has ever cleaned their dice, but I mean, I've been
You
playing
should have
since
gotten an official Wizards of the Coast dice washer.
I'm definitely doing that tonight.
Oh,
yeah.
totally opportunities for branding there.
Yeah, man.
There
I'm
is.
always thinking.
But yeah, I mean, basic edition, and it's funny. There was actually, I don't know if anybody here has ever seen it. There was a D&D coloring book that came out sometime in the late 70s, like 79.
Yeah. They had it at Gen Con in the museum section.
There's one that just came out like a year ago. Like coloring books are cool again.
Yeah.
It's like,
but this was
cool
a coloring book
picture
for
one.
kids.
Oh no, this is adult coloring.
Well, actually, it was kind of for kids.
Look at that.
It was kind of for adults too, but I remember doing that and playing basic. And I mean, I had a group of friends that I played with. We had a rotating DM. Ooh. Hey, Greg, send me one of those.
Yeah, I will.
We have one
We're on
of
a
those,
couple
actually.
second delay for anybody watching. So when I see Greg hold it up, I get to see it like 6 seconds later in real life.
And then we laugh a couple seconds after that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I had a group of friends I played with from like elementary school, junior high, high school, rotating GMs, and actually something kind of cool. So I was on the original design team of EverQuest a really long time ago. And one of the things that we were talking about for EverQuest, I mean, part of our whole thought was we all loved playing MUDs and D&D, but we could never get all our D&D friends kind of back together because everybody like scattered to the winds, was in different places. So one of the whole thoughts behind making, one of the first big fantasy MMOs was, hey, we could get our friends together from anywhere, instead of like once a week when they can travel in to, play at somebody's house on Friday, we could play every single night. And that was kind of some of the thought behind, making some of those things. So I mean, yeah, I've been
Really?
playing forever, and it's kind of helped follow along both from my programming BBS games, programming MUDs, programming the first designing some of the first MMOs, because I'm actually a lousy programmer. You'd never want to hire me to be a programmer. I'm a much better
Noted.
designer.
Noted.
I mean, it's just
that's
part of
something
our culture.
I often say too. It's like a lot of people who have engineering somewhere in their background, but it doesn't feature prominently. Like if my name is on the credits under engineering or programming, your game was
something
in
went
trouble.
wrong.
So,
That's funny too, because Magic the Gathering was ostensibly, designed for, stuff to play when you couldn't get your D&D group together, or when there was a break or downtime. That's the kind of the urban legend about it, and I'm sure there's people here actually who know whether or not that's true. But that's what I'm concerned.
Saying that in that
Yeah, I would
office.
say, I'm pretty sure you have access to Richard Garfield if you really want.
Come over here, Rich, and he's like, "Hello, here I am." That is true. Goodbye. But no, yeah, I didn't realize that about EverQuest. That's pretty amazing, and I'm going to use that in all of my PR communications going forward.
Feel free. I mean, well, actually, one of my absolute proudest moments, Greg, was we were so influenced by D&D, and as we were making EQ, I think it was third edition was kind of coming, or after we published EQ, third edition D&D was coming out, and I know because we got a tour of Wizards at that time, that there were a whole bunch of WotC people playing EQ, and I got to see, we were so influenced, obviously, you can't make a fantasy RPG and not be influenced by D&D.
Yeah.
But seeing tiny bits of like some of the stuff we didn't thought of kind of get referenced by them in third edition, like, Bards, for example, definitely have some reference of EverQuest going into that. But it's just this whole cycle of development of, people make cool stuff, then we make cool stuff, then other people do, and everybody, influences together to kind of push all of this forward into, awesome new things.
It's true. That's every creative industry to a certain extent, but the gaming industry, you can really trace those tendrils of inspiration and how they each build on the next. And some companies are experts at taking exactly what works out of things and making them better. And Dungeons and Dragons has been doing that as well. And you're right.
Yeah, it's funny.
Exactly.
When I was a kid, I used to imagine that when I was a really little kid, I used to imagine that all of the companies like TSR back in the day and DC and Marvel, like they all had like their own building, and all the people that were in the building worked for that company, and then they all like hated the other ones, right? Like the DC people like hate the Marvel people, and they would, if they saw each other, they'd get into fights. Like I'm 4 at this point, so yes, exactly, very much Jets and Sharks. So yeah, when I wound up working at DC years later, like they are the same people. How do you think you get a promotion in the comic book industry? There's only 2 big companies. You just go back and forth. We all used to go out for drinks with each other like every couple of days. So anyway, back to your question list. It was good, and now we're blowing it all up.
Oh no, this is great. I mean, so I have like an agenda item here. It's like nerd out about D&D, because I figured, that's why we're all here. Right?
We're doing it. We're doing it. But no, I mean, we just had Jim Zub in the office recently too, and he's been working for it feels like every comic book company. And you're right, there is not that rivalry per se. It's more about people working together, and it's a small enough industry that like, oh, you can work for this, and then once you see that, you get working on, and the tabletop gaming industry is similar in that way. People trade back and forth between the major publishers, as well as we're building up folks with the Dungeon Masters Guild and getting more and more guidance to the next generation of RPG designers that will come in and make it happen. So yeah, no, I see a lot of correlation between those two.
There's a great comment in the chat from Elwarius. D&D wasn't my first RPG, but it's my favorite because it is the sweet spot between iconic lore, storytelling, interesting mechanics, and advancement. I couldn't say it better myself. Like it scratches all those itches, right? Like there's a bunch of like video games and board games and RPGs that have like great progression or great tactical gameplay, but D&D, it's like it brings it all together. So I just want to highlight that one. I think that was a good one.
It's true, and what I like about it too is that it hits different things for different people.
Yeah.
Like some people really like the tactical type of play, and some people really like optimizing their characters or having weird and strange characters that they are not optimized like they like to play. And then some people like the story and the drama that can evolve over years of play. And some people like one shots, and some people like maps and really making maps. It's one of those things that it appeals to different people, and it's such a creative smorgasbord, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
I think that's
a
actually
cathedral,
part
and
of
that it
what
needs
makes
so
it
many
a
different
hobby.
disciplines.
As opposed to just a game.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that kind of came up while we were working on Dungeon Chess was that one of the opportunities that we got there was to spend some time working with these monsters that that we had kind of grown up thinking about and stuff, and trying to put our own put a little bit of a fingerprint on that lore. What does a beholder sound like?
This is a perfect segue. I'd like you to keep talking, but I'm going to bring up a little bit of the concept art that we worked on.
Oh, nice. Good idea.
For Dungeon Chess. So please.
Hey, Cory, since we're on a delay, can you tell me what's coming up as you
so
post each one?
that's a picture of the beholder, and then it's gone into the oh my god, I can't remember the name. The Deva, yeah, exactly.
Well, you know what? It's gonna go too fast. It's like a shuffle rotator.
Yeah.
So why don't we just sort of chat? I think the cool thing that you were saying, and this is one of the things that I really loved about the character development and the room development was
exactly. And I told this story before, so stop me if you've heard this one. But
I've heard it. Stop. I was kidding.
But when Jeff was looking at the room that we had decided, okay, obviously this has to take place in an iconic location, and as you can see in the background of this chat, it was the Yawning Portal is where we wound up, and with that awesome giant mouth fireplace, and so we went back to find reference on the Yawning Portal, and you guys kindly gave us a bunch of reference, but there was never an actual authoritative floor plan of what the Yawning Portal looked like. And so when we asked about it, you guys were like, yeah, that doesn't really exist. We'll have somebody make it. So then we got this awesome floor plan back. But the way that the floor plan originally was laid out didn't have a big enough space for us to put the table in. So I think Jeff was the guy who was like,
yeah, I was photoshopping.
Yeah, you actually sent back a GIF that was like, could this wall be over here? And there's a couple of arrows, and then they changed it. So now the actual Yawning Portal in actual Faerun, because this is how I live, has some kind of impact from Dungeon Chess in it, and even that little tiny sliver of impact is a pretty cool thing for people who grew up doing this.
I think you've got 60 years of game development or something on this call, and I don't know about you guys, but I've only ever influenced the universe of Dungeons and Dragons once. That was super cool.
Yeah.
That is cool.
I mean,
yeah, it was specifically, one of the things, since we've been doing a whole bunch of VR games, we've learned, what does feel good in an environment? How much space do you need around you, for a table and chairs? And it was literally, as I was looking over the floor plans, I'm like, okay, this corner room would be the perfect location. You can look out, and see the floor of the Yawning Portal from your little private, corner room. But man, we need a couple extra feet. So it was literally me taking the floor plan into Photoshop and doing a little bit of that, editing the map, because I used to draw a lot of maps too, and sending it back, and we're like, I hope they accept it, and I'm sure you guys were like, whatever. Sure, it's not a big deal.
They thought about it for a whole week. There was a series of meetings. They convened the Council of Faerun Floor Planning.
We got the Wizards 3 on the phone. We got Mordenkainen, Elminster.
It occurs to me that when we work with you guys, Greg, I never think of you guys as a dude wearing a t-shirt and a hoodie. I kind of always think of you guys as dwarves and elves in a castle, subconsciously in my heart.
Right. Which makes sense to some degree. I mean, we're always in costume, always making loud proclamations of "You shall not pass." And,
well, John at least is always in costume.
Yes,
I can attest to that.
We actually have on Slack a little John rolling his eyes icon that you can put up when like Jeff makes a really bad pun or something like that. So,
in Slack.
Custom icons for the win. One of the things that Jeff, you were just saying that kind of reminded me of another part of the dungeon chess process was because we had already done one VR game and because we were, there are people on our staff who have worked on VR for years. There was a lot of like taking extra care because this was one of the first times that D&D stuff had showed up in VR. On top of just us being, tremendous D&D nerds and wanting to get everything right, there's this sense of like, okay, if this, like, how high off of the ground does a beholder float if a beholder was constrained in a chessboard pattern? Like all of the overthinking that you would think that a bunch of people who are huge into D&D would do actually happened.
We did.
Good.
Actually, Coray, that reminds me. Can you bring up the gold dragon picture?
Yeah, I can. The screen will go black, but you know what, Jeff? Why don't you talk a little bit while I'm doing that about that process? Because like we did spend a lot of ink arguing about like, no, that's not the challenge rating of that one. Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So one of the things that we tried to do is we were lining up chess pieces, make sure that the challenge rating of the monster corresponded with basically the power of the actual piece itself. And so we wanted to make sure the kings and queens, the most powerful pieces, fire giant, red dragon, storm giant, gold dragon. You're right, Coray. The screen definitely did go black. Hopefully, something will come on.
Yep, we got it. We got it.
Okay, cool.
He's pushing buttons. Magic is happening.
there we go.
Excellent.
D&D is happening, not magic.
One of my favorite actual pieces is the gold dragon that we're seeing on the screen right now, and the reason for this is all of the pieces they're not perfectly to scale against each other, but they're pretty close. The giant is considerably bigger than like the elf pawn, and we picked this very intentionally, but the guy, our art director, Jason, on this one was trying to figure out, and we were working back and forth, how do you fit a dragon into a square without, so that but it doesn't clip through everything next to it, and we don't have to make it tiny. And after a whole bunch of work, one day he was sitting, I got this in my inbox, and he's like, what do you think about this? What if we had the dragon like sitting on its haunches, wings up, and its tail wrapped around itself, and when you select it, it like launches itself up into the air, so it's flying above the board, and then its tail goes out, its wings go out, and it's still full size. But he kind of figured out how to wrap a dragon into something you could actually fit into a chess square while still letting it remain, big.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of those ones that you never really think about. So you're like, how do you fit a dragon in a chess square without making it tiny?
Right.
So this is kind of one of my happiest pieces, just from a design perspective, because we managed to get a large-scale dragon in, and it was just, it was kind of cool.
It reminds me of one of my favorite minis. So you guys, when you do DLC for new monsters, this one is the rock that fits on a large scale. But it's, rocks are much bigger than this, obviously, but this is in the middle of how it could look if you're using it. I'm sure the miniatures builders at this time had the same problem where it was like, how do we make this? Because the wingspan itself will knock over everything else. But here it is, and it's got a rider on it as well, which makes it doubly cool. But I just love that it's, using that three-dimensional space in a way that's interesting and new. And you guys have to deal with that in a digital game, more so than others have to, because of the constraints and stuff like that. And that's, I think that's another cool way that why it's interesting to work with different formats like a VR chess game, because you have to solve these problems, and we have those ideas, even really thought about, or even just, what is the interior of, what's the floor plan of the Yawning Portal, like things that we wouldn't necessarily have to map out, in the past, but now we do, and it forces us to solve that. And then the just lore and interest and amount of information about Dungeons and Dragons continues to expand with the more people that interact with it, so it's just cool stuff.
That is a perfect segue. And what's really cool is I don't think anyone, so we've got the trailer queued up. I'm going to play that in a sec.
Sure.
I don't think anyone has ever sort of attended a lecture on the concept art, animation, and like lore behind a game and then watched the trailer about it. At least I'm assuming
Well,
not
give it a
everyone-
try.
Yeah. It's literally the perfect way to sort of appreciate like the output of this. So this is the trailer. We'll play it. And I don't think anything technically could possibly go wrong. So I'm going to click the button and it will work.
You said it. Famous last words.
Indeed.
Looks like it's playing.
Are we talking over it? Or?
And the Yanni portal's so beautiful.
And
Yeah.
it always warms my heart to see that that trailer. So there was actually a great question that popped up in Twitch, and I will rely on Coray, who is slightly closer to the Twitch screen, to tell us.
Why am I not using this awesome pink mouse?
Yeah,
What a stupid
to
noob.
tell us who asked this question, but there was sort of a oh yeah, exactly. I can't.
It's
Rakam?
Yeah, he said, do we have an idea of what the VR by D&D intersection demographic looks like? Which is a great question.
And a question that we actually had to answer for one of our platform partners with numbers and math. So
Math.
while I can't tell you the very precise answer, even though we do know it, the good news is that if you look at who was buying VR and who had VR when we first started doing this, and then as the VR market has expanded a little bit, where it has gone, if you imagine a really overlappy looking Venn diagram, those people are people, right? They're very much people who know what D&D is, and while you're definitely right to say that it seemed like a niche product, it is a niche product because part of why we decided to do this like combat chess game is because we don't want it to be the very last D&D game that we ever do, or the very last thing that we ever do with Wizards. And we wanted to make sure that we started out with something that we could sort of test ourselves with, that how can we get great mileage out of this brand? How can we, figure out how to animate these characters in VR? How can we figure out how to build these environments in VR? And to have something that's a little bit less high profile than like, oh my God, it's the giantest D&D game of all time. Is there more down the road? Yes, we certainly intend for there to be. And our friends at Wizard certainly intend for there to be. So while you're absolutely right to say that is a niche product, the goal there is, make all the mistakes early, fix them all before it comes out, give you something polished to chew on while we get up to speed in a brand new medium.
Yeah. Hey, Coray, actually, while we're chatting about this too, could you throw up that cool, the battle poster?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to call this one out too. Actually, Greg, I think at some point you guys are going to throw this up on your free wallpapers as well, because I know we sent the assets over, but it's probably good kind of timing to say, hey, at some point soon, or you guys can grab it off the Experiment 7 website. But
Sure.
It's a good looking piece of art. Again, just, it was fun to be able to work around, some of the amazing D&D stuff.
For sure. I love the unicorns, the nightmares being the rampant. What is that? That's rampant.
Yes,
is that what the name of that's called?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this also really shows, as we were looking at the pieces, the queen is the most powerful piece, on the chessboard. So those were the dragons. You see them. The kings are the most important. You got the storm giants. For things that can kind of, line up and get rank and file, you can see, the high elves and the drow. The knights are the unicorn and the nightmare. You can see the bishop as the deva and the mind flayer, or the pieces that can like charge or go straight across the field, the beholder and the werebear. We really tried to line them up so you could kind of get this head-to-head synergy and kind of look at the pieces and go, yeah, I could see the mind flayer blasting a piece as a rook all the way across the table, or as the werebear charging across with his huge axe and slamming into something to try and kind of line that up. And this is just a great one to kind of show off the design of the pieces as well as just the coolness of the D&D universe we get to work with.
Yeah, one of the things that is popping up a lot in the questions, and that has popped up a lot whenever we've shown anybody the games, is how great the art is. So our art director on this project to start this project and our chief concept artist is a guy that had worked for Wizards before. So he was not an accidental pick as the right person, and so his work is really just incredible. And we also wanted to make minis out of them. We have a friend who works at a 3D printing facility, and we're going to. I tried in a lackluster way to get my act together. We can't swear on this, can we?
Fuck no.
We don't care.
We tried to get our shit together to make minis of the pieces for our house D&D campaign at work at the office, but I'm just bad. I'm bad at making that kind of thing happen. So instead, I bought them a bunch of minis and they look way more like the characters than the chess pieces.
Yeah. The one
I'm sure WizKids appreciates that.
Yes, they do, and they are WizKids minis, in fact.
The one thing I love about our character, I mean, there's a lot of things, but I think the if you go to the drill down the basic art direction, which is sort of like the stuff that our art director and Jeff and Kate over at WotC did a fantastic job, is a big part of chess is pattern recognition, and if you look at these pieces, they look like the pieces they represent, right? The pawns.
Actually, Coray, can you go back to that little skim through thing, because I could point that out.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Perfect example, right?
If you'll notice, there's the silhouette of the pieces in the middle of each piece of concept art, and you can kind of look at the squareness, the beholder, or when you look at like the bishops, which have kind of the pointy tops for both the mind flayer and the deva.
Corset on the bishop and the kings with their sort of very regal posture.
Yeah.
The knights are pretty.
Or even kind of like the battle skirts on the pawns, because the pawns always have the bottom part that flares out.
Mm-hmm. And the knights obviously. Well, there are horses.
So we're getting close to the end of this little thing, and
that's a drag.
I know, but
that went by fast.
Yeah, I know. So we have a couple little things to share. We have some new screenshots which just got approved by you guys. So I wanted to step through those.
Click.
And again, I'm going to click it. It'll work. There we
I
go.
like that you're
mind flaying.
So this is the latest set of screenshots. This shows the yawning portal and a bunch of our other sort of core features of both the platform, the game, what you'll be experiencing when you play. And you can see there's I think one of my little
a fox.
Yeah. Jeff loves the fox. We got to get that fox in like every screenshot.
And that fox mask is awesome.
Yeah, the masks, by the way, are the player avatars. So the way that you see your opponents is as one of a series of masks that they can choose from, and there's
actually
very much D&D-ish stuff in there as well, like elves and dwarves and Viking helmets and stuff. Yeah. But Jeff's personal favorite is the kitsune, the fox.
So actually, one of the cool pieces for rotation, where you see the one with the fox mask, you also see the hands.
Yeah.
One of my single favorite things to do actually is, this is touch enabled, so you can reach down and you can actually pick up the pieces and you can, like bring them up to your face and look at them. And holding a little beholder that squiggles in your hand, as it looks at you, and putting it down on the board, or picking up the unicorn and having the little sparkles on its horns trail as you go. It's just holding little animated pieces is amazingly magical. And if anybody's never on the stream tried VR before, you absolutely, I mean, not even as a plug for the game, but sure, as a plug for the game. But when you get this and you hold tiny little animated figures in your hands, it's friggin' awesome.
Yeah, there's something like there's some weird bit of uncanniness that is super awesome that happens whenever in any VR experience or in any VR game, like in Toy Box, the demo, when you first pick up like an action figure sized thing or a mini sized thing, it's like, man, it's just instantly your brain is like warped back to being 5 years old, and
you wish it did that.
Right, like that's what G.I. Joes ought to do.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
This, Kung Fu grip, like you can see it happen for real. Has nothing to do with Kung Fu, by the way. I never really thought about that.
That's why my form is all wrong.
Yeah. This a lot of this reminds me of the stuff that we saw at HasCon. So when we were at HasCon, we demoed the game for all of the folks that were coming through there. And man, when you saw when kids first put on VR, and it was often their first VR experience ever, or they had seen VR, but they hadn't seen it be something they wanted. It was
That's
just
cool.
like, oh yeah, like I saw VR and it was a virtual tour of the White House and I was bored. But this was like, oh my God, dragons! Like just seeing kids like just have their minds blown over and over again for 8 hours as we demoed the game was pretty great. It made you feel good.
That was incredibly impressive. The other impressive part was you pulling like Neo moves to because like you can't see when you have the VR headset on, so kids would be like, "This is great!" Like, you almost got 14 concussions, I think.
Yeah.
So. Before we wrap up, I wanted to show Mr. Greg here something that's a little bit overdue. But Greg, we have this funny thing where we make digital games so they don't get boxes. But we went ahead and like arts and crafted our own little box with the Oculus logo, and it's got all the credits on the back, just like the old school games of about 8 months ago. And so these are right now in San Diego, which you can see is properly labeled now, getting a bunch of signatures.
Oh, that's cool.
We're going to send a couple over to your office as a thank you for you guys just being the best possible partners that we could imagine for making these kinds of games.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I love having a physical thing too. It's like a nice way to display and also be like, hey, look.
It's weird that kind of like just at the time that I feel like we're like grown-ups enough to like have that stuff and not have to explain it away like you said before. Like now they take it away. They take the opportunity away for me to have like
Greg, this is the big folder of them right here waiting. We're going to sign party tomorrow for the West Coast.
Sign it. So
that's pretty cool.
I think we're just about out of time. So,
Thank you guys.
Greg, I wanted to get sort of before we break a quick update from you. Like, what's new and exciting in D&D land? What what's coming up that's great? What are you kind of working on these days?
Well, we got Xanathar's Guide to
2 minutes or
Everything.
less.
I know, right? Good thing I do this for D&D news, and I can really fast. We have Xanathar's Guide to Everything that's coming out in game stores on November 10th. That's where you can get the alternate cover that's designed by Hydra74. It is amazing. Check for that on the website if you want more visuals on that. It'll be out everywhere on November 21st. We have a Force Grade live show, which is happening on November 18th. It'll be broadcast here on our Twitch channel, but you can get it and watch it if you're in the New York area. I hope you guys in the New York office, including Geoffrey, who's no longer in New York but now in San Diego, we'll be able to come there and hang out with Joe Manganiello, Deborah Ann Wall, Dylan Sprouse, Utkarsh and Budkar, as well as Matthew Mercer, freshly back from his nerdy moon that he's been on with Marisha after Critical Role has been winding down. So that's been really exciting. And then, of course, we got Extra Life happening this weekend. November 3rd, it starts with a game Dungeon Master by Mike Merles with a bunch of awesome celebrities from GameholeCon in Wisconsin. Then it comes back to here. Misclicks is now going to be doing something after that game on Friday night. As well as Will Jones from Encounter Roleplay will be playing to start things off on Saturday, November 4th. Then it's back to the offices here. I'll be hosting kind of an hour-long kind of session, hoping to raise more money for Seattle Children's Hospital. You can go to my page and donate there. I'm at Greg Tito on Extra Life. You should be able to find it easily enough there. I'll drop the link here into this chat as well. But yeah, we're raising tons of money. We're going to play Dungeons & Dragons all day long on Saturday. A bunch of games. Sean Wood, who's sitting right over there, is going to be Dungeon Mastering 1, as well as Lauren Orban, Obo Crazy, who actually was in the chat earlier. There she is, and then we'll be throwing it back to Gamehole Con for a game that's going to be Dungeon Mastered by Chris Perkins. And cool about that, Ed Greenwood is actually going to be in that game, the father of the realms, in addition to a bunch of other fun folks. So all the information you can find out on the Extra Life page on the Dungeons & Dragons website. And I hope you come in and watch us play D&D all weekend long.
Heck yes.
Nailed it. All right, awesome. Greg, thank you
And
so
actually,
much for joining
As
us.
a quick wrap up, we'll be back on streaming with you guys sometime soon.
Yep.
And if you want to see the rest of our streams, come over to Experiment 7's Twitch stream.
Sounds
We're
good.
on the internet.
On the interweb.
Yes.
Greg, thanks for joining us. Jeff,
Yep.
always a pleasure.
Yay.
Demetri,
Yay.
I'll
Thank
see
you.
right now.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.